The last shovel of dirt hit the casket. I was 64 years old, trying to stand as they buried my son. My daughter-in-law leaned in, her eyes dry. "I need the keys to Dylan's Mustang," she whispered, her voice sharp. "It's mine now." In that instant, my grief mixed with a cold dread. His death was not natural. My name is Eleanor Whitford. I am 64 years old, and my voice is gone, scraped raw from 3 days of weeping. I am a widow, living in a quiet house in the suburbs of Denver. Or I was, until my eldest son, Dylan, died. A stroke, they said. Sudden. We buried him in a green Colorado cemetery. The sun was bright, but the wind had teeth, cutting through my thin black coat. I watched the line of relatives, their faces blurred, as the pastor spoke words about heaven that felt hollow. I just focused on the polished wood of the casket being lowered into the ground. His wife, Savannah, stood beside me. She is 35. Her black dress was expensive, perhaps a little too stylish for a funeral. Her eyes were red, but they were dry. She kept checking her phone, holding it tight in her manicured hand, as if waiting for a call more important than the final goodbye to her husband. The mechanics whirred, and the casket settled. The last shovel of dirt hit the lid. Savannah leaned in close, her perfume suffocating. She didn't touch me. Her voice was a sharp whisper, urgent and cold, right in my ear. "Mom, I need the keys to Dylan's Mustang. It's mine now. Don't let anyone else drive it." I was trembling from the cold and the grief, but at her words, a different kind of tremor started, a hot rush of anger that shocked me. The Mustang, that ridiculous, beautiful, old sports car. I remembered the day he bought it. He'd driven straight to my house, grinning like a little boy. We'd taken it right out onto the highway, the windows down, the radio too loud. It was the last time I'd seen him look truly, uncomplicatedly happy. The contrast was sickening. As guests filed past me, murmuring condolences I couldn't hear, I watched Savannah. She wasn't grieving. She was networking. She was standing near the Mustang, parked conspicuously by the gate, whispering with a man I didn't recognize. I caught phrases on the wind. "Sell this one," and transfer the title. A feeling of filth settled over the scent of the funeral lilies. Later, back at my quiet suburban home, the silence was heavy. The casseroles sat untouched. Savannah and my youngest son, Aaron, sat at my kitchen table, their voices low. They were already discussing my future. "Mom, we need to be realistic," Savannah said. "All business. This house is too much for you." Aaron, looking pale and stressed, nodded. "They have these wonderful retirement communities. Mom, places with activities. They were talking about selling my home, moving me away. I was too exhausted to fight, too numb to even understand. But I saw Aaron wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked sick with stress, like a man hiding a terrible secret. Savannah, however, was focused. She kept using words I hated, words that had no place on the day my son was buried. Debt, expenses, insurance. That night, the house was finally empty. I was alone in the dark, the silence stretching out. The bedside phone suddenly rang, jarring the quiet. I fumbled for it. A man's voice, hesitant and low. "Mrs. Whitford." He introduced himself as the chief financial officer at Northline Capital Metrics, Dylan's firm. His voice was shaking. "Mrs. Whitford, I have something extremely important to discuss about Dylan's death, and about your daughter-in-law. It must be in person. And please, do not tell anyone in your family you are meeting me." The next morning, I told Savannah I needed to pick up a prescription. She offered to send Aaron. "No," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "I need the air." I gripped my car keys, my knuckles white. The drive felt strange. I was weak, but I was stubborn. It felt like the first time I'd driven after my husband died. The world, both familiar and threatening, the North Line Capitol Metrics building was a cold tower of glass and steel. I felt ancient and small walking through the lobby, surrounded by young people in sharp suits, all moving too fast. It reminded me of what Dylan used to say when I asked about his job. "You don't need to understand it all, Mom. Just know I'm okay." It seemed he wasn't. Marcus Hale's office was on a high floor. He was a man in his 50s, with kind, worried eyes and a desk that was too tidy. He got straight to it. "Mrs. Whitford? What I have to say is difficult." He slid a file across the desk. "Dylan took out a new life insurance policy 3 months ago, a very large one." He paused, and I knew the answer before he said it. "The sole beneficiary is Savannah." He then showed me the numbers, printouts of spreadsheets that swam before my eyes. "There were unusual transfers," Marcus said, pointing to a column. "Large sums moving from Dylan's personal account to their joint account in the last few months." He then opened his laptop. And there was this. It was an email, or a ghost of one, recovered from a server backup. It was from Dylan. "Marcus, I need advice. Hypothetically, how do I protect my mother's assets if my wife and brother are declared bankrupt?" "He deleted it right after sending," Marcus said. My stomach tightened. "Bankrupt." "Dylan confided in me a little," Marcus said, his voice low. "He was worried. Apparently, Savannah and Aaron got involved in some unregulated crypto investment. They lost everything. More than everything. They owe hundreds of thousands to a loan shark, a man named Trenton." He let that sink in. "Dylan was terrified they would try to use your house as collateral." Then he gave me the final, brutal push. He handed me another piece of paper. It was a scan, a sales contract for my house, my home. "This was in a file Dylan was building," Marcus said. At the bottom was a signature, my signature. But I had never signed it. It was a frighteningly good forgery. The contract stated the house would be sold to a shell company, pending a doctor's confirmation that I was, in his words, mentally unfit due to memory decline. I couldn't breathe. "Marcus, I don't understand." "Dylan had a meeting scheduled with me," he said, his face grim. "The day after he died, he said he had proof against Savannah, Aaron, and this Trenton. He was coming to me for help in gathering it." He looked me straight in the eye. "He never made it to that meeting. He died in his sleep." The stroke, the suddenness of it all felt wrong. I thought back, my mind grasping for details. I remembered Savannah fussing over Dylan's medication in his final weeks. He'd been stressed, unable to sleep. She'd insisted on handling his pills, telling him she'd help him get some real rest. "Mrs. Whitford," Marcus said gently, pulling me back. "I have a friend, a private investigator, and I know an excellent lawyer who specializes in elder abuse. If you are willing, we can fight this." He leaned forward. "But to do it, We need time. We need more proof. That means you would have to play the part they've cast for you. The frail, confused old woman. He held my gaze. It means you will have to endure whatever they have planned next. I returned from Marcus Hale's office with lead weights in my shoes. The house felt alien. I stood in the hallway, looking at the photographs that lined the wall. Dylan, his arm draped around Savannah, both of them beaming at some long-forgotten barbecue. Another of Dylan and Aaron, arms slung over each other's shoulders at Aaron's college graduation. My family. I tried to reconcile the smiling faces in the frames with the cold calculations Marcus had described. I was staring at the people who were actively planning to destroy me on paper. That evening, Savannah brought me a glass of water and a new blister pack of pills. I spoke to the doctor at Solace Bridge Behavioral Clinic, she said, her voice syrupy with false concern. He said, "Given the shock, you need a stronger sleeping pill. Your nerves are just too frayed." I looked at the small white tablet. Solace Bridge. I committed the name to memory. I nodded meekly, put the pill in my mouth, and tucked it under my tongue as I sipped the water. She watched me swallow. When she left the room, I walked to the bathroom, spat the dissolving, bitter pill into the sink, and rinsed it away. The gaslighting started immediately. Aaron, my sensitive youngest son, began carrying a small, leather-bound notebook. "Mum, you already asked me that this morning. Remember," he'd say gently. I had not. "Mom, I told you Savannah handled the catering for the wake. You thanked her for it." I had done no such thing. He would ask me the same question 3 or 4 times in an hour. When I finally snapped in frustration, "I already answered you," he would look sad, sigh, and make a small note in his book. They were building their case when they were asleep. I started my own work. In the quiet darkness of the house, I went to my husband's old desk and pulled open the file drawer. I found my folders, thick with the history of my life, tucked behind my actual, paid-off mortgage deed. I found a crisp, professional-looking folder I had never seen. Inside were high-quality photocopies of my house documents, and on the signature lines, there it was, my name, written in my own hand. A forgery so perfect it made me shiver. I met Marcus's investigator 2 days later. She chose a brightly lit, 24/7 diner off the highway, the kind of place where no one remembers faces. Her name was Loretta. She was a middle-aged black woman with the calmest, most observant eyes I had ever seen. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Marcus filled me in," she said, sliding a cheap, prepaid phone across the sticky tabletop. "Only use this to call me. Ever." Then she dropped a small black object into my palm. It looked like a generic keychain. Press the side button once to record. Press it again to stop. Keep it in your pocket. Always. I became an actress. I learned to fumble in the pocket of my dressing gown, clicking the small button before Aaron or Savannah entered the room. I played the part they wanted. I was the frail, confused, grieving mother. And because they believed I was fading, they spoke freely. I recorded hours of conversation, disjointed snippets about getting the doctor to sign off and selling the house to pay Trenton before he gets crazy. One afternoon, Savannah left for a client meeting. I knew Aaron was in the basement. My heart hammered against my ribs, the betrayal feeling sharp and physical. I slipped into the guest room they were using, under the mattress. My fingers hit a thick folder. I pulled it out. It was full of credit card statements, thousands of dollars in charges from Vegas, printed emails from online betting sites, and correspondence regarding a massive, high-interest loan from a company called Blackridge Funding. At the very bottom, I found it. A photocopy of Dylan's life insurance policy, just as Marcus had said. The beneficiary section was highlighted Savannah Whitford, but it was the note, scrawled in red ink in the margin, that made me physically sick. If she falls first, double bonus. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the burner phone steady. I photographed every single page. I sent the images to Loretta using the encrypted app she had installed. This was the stuff of nightmares, of dark movies. It wasn't a life I recognized, but the nausea was real. The cold in my chest was real, and the memory of Savannah's voice in the cemetery. It's mine now, burned away every last bit of my fear, leaving only a cold, hard resolve. Savannah became more blatant. She started her campaign over breakfast, pushing a glossy brochure across the table. "Mom, look," she said, her voice dripping with manufactured sweetness. "Sun Hollow Village. It's just wonderful. They have a pool, yoga classes. You'll make friends. It's just not safe for you here, all alone." I stared at the picture of smiling seniors playing shuffleboard. "That's nice, dear," I said, looking up with what I hoped was a vacant expression. "But do they have a parking garage for Dylan's Mustang? It needs to be covered." Savannah's smile tightened. Aaron tried the financial angle. He sat with me while I was pretending to look at the mail, his leather notebook open on his knee. "Mum, this is getting complicated. All these bills." He gestured to the envelopes. Why don't we just make things easier? We can put my name on your bank account, just as a joint signer. That way, I can help you pay everything on time." He tried to sell it as a convenience, a son helping his aging mother. But I knew what it was. He was trying to convince me that the bank wouldn't let an old woman manage her own money. A few days later, Savannah insisted on taking me for a memory checkup. We drove to Solace Bridge Behavioral Clinic, the name from the pill bottle. It wasn't a hospital. It was a small, sad-looking office in a suburban strip mall. Inside, a man named Dr. Kelton, wearing a stained and wrinkled lab coat, called me into his office. He tried to ask me leading questions. "Mrs. Whitford, do you ever find yourself misplacing things?" he asked, not looking up from his form. "Do you ever hear whispers when no one is there?" I followed Loretta's instructions. I answered incorrectly, but selectively. I forgot the current president, but remembered my childhood address in perfect detail. I admitted to being forgetful since Dylan died, but denied hearing voices. I gave him just enough to write me off as a grieving, slightly disordered old woman, but not enough to declare me legally incompetent. Not yet. While I fumbled for answers, I studied his office, the specific model of his printer, the name of his assistant on a plaque, the official seal on his degree. Loretta, parked in a car across the street, was noting it all. That night, Savannah lost her patience. She came into my room as I was getting ready for bed. "You did terribly today," she hissed. The sweet facade was gone. When I didn't respond, she grabbed my arm. Her fingers dug into my flesh. Hard. "Mum, stop fighting this," she said, her voice a low, vicious knife. "The more you forget, the easier this is for everyone." You don't want Aaron to get his legs broken by those loan sharks. Do you? My hand was in the pocket of my dressing gown, my fingers tight around the keychain. I'd clicked it on the moment I heard her footsteps. It recorded every single, chilling word. I used that threat. The next Sunday, after church, when the pastor stopped by, I brought it up. "Oh, Pastor," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm so worried. Savannah says someone is going to break Aaron's legs." Savannah, who was bringing in coffee, froze. The pastor looked horrified. I repeated it to our neighbor over the fence. "I'm so afraid about Aaron's legs." Savannah started getting angry, her frustration mounting as the neighborhood whispers began. Loretta was pleased with the recording. "This is good," she said over the burner phone. "This is coercion. Now we set the trap." Her new plan was simple. I had to give in. I had to agree to sell the house. Let them bring out their forged papers, their crooked notary, their shell company. Let Marcus and the lawyer gather every piece of their fraudulent network in one place. So, I set the bait. That night, I found Savannah in the kitchen. I leaned on the counter, looking exhausted and defeated. "Savannah," I whispered. "I've been thinking. You're right." I saw the flicker of surprise in her eyes. "This house, it's just memories. I should sell it. I'm just so tired. I just want Dylan to be at peace." Her transformation was immediate and grotesque. The fake sympathy vanished, replaced by a sharp, hungry enthusiasm. "Oh, Mom, that's so wise," she said, already reaching for her phone. "You're doing the right thing. I know a broker, a specialist, who can handle this fast. He's very discreet." She walked away, dialing, already talking in low, excited tones. I watched her go. "You just worry about your future, dear," I said softly to her back. She didn't hear me. "I'll take care of the rest." The plan to trap them with the house sale was in motion, but Loretta's next call shifted the earth beneath my feet. The fraud felt insignificant. This was about murder. "Eleanor," I pulled the hospital admission file from the night Dylan died, she said, her voice flat. All business. It was chaotic, so no one looked closely, but Savannah signed a specific waiver. She refused a toxicology screen. My hand gripped the phone. The file notes she cited a known hereditary heart condition and explicitly declined an autopsy. My blood ran cold. Dylan had no heart condition. Our family had none. "There's more," Loretta continued, and I sat down heavily. The building manager at Dylan's condo complex finally cooperated. He gave us the security footage from the lobby. She paused. "The night he died, Savannah left the building at almost 1 a.m. She was alone. She looked calm. Eleanor. She was carrying a small, white plastic bag. This detail hung in the air. Dylan didn't live with her during the work week. He had his own apartment closer to the office. She had no reason to be there so late. I immediately thought of the pills, the sleeping pills Savannah had been helping him with. Marcus had already sent a sample from a bottle Dylan had left at his office to a private lab he trusted. The report had come back 2 days earlier, but I hadn't understood its significance. Now I did. The primary ingredient, when taken in a high enough dose, didn't just cause sleep. It caused quiet, slow respiratory failure. It would look exactly like a stroke. That night, I couldn't rest. I sat in the dark living room, pulling up old voicemails on my phone just to hear Dylan's voice. And then I heard it. A message from 2 months ago. One I had almost deleted. Mom. His voice, strained and low. Hey, I need to talk. It's about Savannah and Aaron. I'm worried. I'm really worried. Mom, I'm scared one day I won't be able to protect you. It wasn't a warning. It was a goodbye. My grief, which had been a heavy, suffocating blanket, curdled. It turned into something cold and heavy, like a stone in my gut. I went into the garage, the air smelling of oil and dust, and sat in the driver's seat of the Mustang. I put my hands on the cold steering wheel. I pictured my son, lying in his bed, helpless. I pictured Savannah, not frantic, not calling for help, but calm. Did she stand there? Did she wait? Did she watch him stop breathing before she picked up her white plastic bag and walked out? Loretta and the lawyer wanted to take this new evidence straight to the police, to open a formal homicide investigation. I was the one who hesitated. What if they don't believe us? I asked Loretta, my voice hollow. What if they bungle it? What if she walks free? My son's murder will be filed away as a statistic, an accidental overdose by a stressed-out executive. My mind started going to dark places. I imagined ways to get justice myself. Ruining her financially wasn't enough. Not anymore. I pictured her name in the headlines. I pictured her losing everything. And then I pictured darker things. Violent, final things that made me sick with my own capacity for darkness. The clock was ticking. At dinner, Savannah, buoyed by my apparent agreement to sell the house, was careless. She was on the phone with Aaron, who was in the other room. It's fine, she said, her voice sharp. I already promised Trenton we would have the house money squared away within 3 weeks. It's happening. 3 weeks. That was my deadline. If I didn't act, I would lose my house and the chance to make her pay for what she did to Dylan. That night, I stood in the hallway, looking at the same framed photo of Dylan. Tears streamed down my face. What do you want me to do? Dylan? I whispered to his smiling face. Do I trust the police? Or do I end this myself? I wiped the tears away angrily. My reflection in the glass showed eyes that were no longer just sad. They were cold. I'll do both. My grief was a tool now. I walked into my local bank branch, leaning heavily on a cane I didn't need. I played the part of a confused, grieving widow perfectly. I spoke to a sympathetic young manager, fretting about my complicated finances. With his earnest help, I moved the bulk of my life savings, every penny my husband and I had saved, into a new, irrevocable trust. It was managed by Marcus's lawyer. The terms were ironclad. The trust could only be accessed or changed by me, and only if a board-certified neurologist, not named Dr. Kelton, declared me of sound mind. The entire meeting, my shaky hand signing the papers, was discreetly recorded by a second keychain Loretta had given me. Next, I secured my exit. Marcus helped me establish a small, legitimate-looking charity, the Dylan Whitford Scholarship Fund. Through this fund, I leased a small, furnished apartment in a secure building downtown. It was an anonymous, empty space, and it was my lifeboat. My lawyer was a sharp woman who had seen this all before. At her office, I drafted a new will. It was simple. It specified that if my death was deemed, by any authority, to be from unnatural or suspicious causes, my entire estate, the house, the trust. Everything was to be immediately transferred to a national charity for victims of elder financial abuse. Savannah and Aaron were not mentioned by name. They were simply erased. Back at the house, I left my homework on the kitchen table. It was a bank statement, one I'd requested before moving the money. It showed a very healthy six-figure balance. I left it there, as if I'd forgotten it. I watched from the hallway as Savannah walked past, slowed, and then stopped to look at it. I saw the greed in her eyes, the quick, satisfied glance she gave it before continuing on. The bait was taken. That evening, I gave my best performance. I slumped at the dinner table, pushing food around my plate. "I'm just so tired," I whispered, letting a tear fall. All this paperwork, the house. I looked at Savannah, my eyes pleading. I want it to be over. I think we should just sign the papers. Soon? I'm too tired to fight anymore. I just want peace. Savannah's eyes lit up. She was on the phone within minutes, arranging the broker's visit. "He can be here tomorrow, Mom," she said, her voice bright. "He'll bring all the papers. You just have to sign. Then it's all done." The day of the signing, I met Loretta and Marcus at the diner. They had the document they had drafted, the fake sales contract. It was filled with legal traps, clauses that were subtly predatory, terms that no person of sound mind would ever agree to. "He'll push for this," Marcus said, tapping the forged signature page. "And when he does," Loretta added, "he's admitting to knowingly defrauding a person he believes is incompetent." She handed me a small, beautiful vase with a silk flower in it. "The camera is in the stem. Put it on the dining table. Make sure it's pointed at the head of the table." I went home and prepared my own file. It was a thick, blue folder. Inside, I placed the fake contract on top. Beneath it, I layered the truth, a copy of Dylan's insurance policy, the toxicology report from Marcus's private lab, a high-resolution photo of Savannah's handwritten note, "If she falls first, double bonus." This was not for them. This was my insurance. I made 2 last calls. First, to Pastor Davies. "Oh, Pastor, I'm so glad I caught you. I'm having such a difficult afternoon. I just feel so confused. I wonder if you could stop by around 3, just for a prayer." He agreed immediately. My second call was to my neighbor, Martha. "Martha, I know you're busy, but I'm having some men over about the house sale tomorrow at 3, and I'm just so worried I'll be taken advantage of. Would you mind just being here as a witness?" She said she wouldn't miss it. That night, I stood in the garage. The air was still. I ran my hand over the cool metal flank of the Mustang, my fingers tracing the logo. I thought of the camera in the vase, the trap in the contract, the witnesses on their way. "Tomorrow," I whispered to the empty car, my voice steady. "Tomorrow, you'll hear the truth. Dylan, in the car you loved most." At precisely 3 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Savannah, dressed in a sharp blazer like she was closing a major real estate deal, hurried to answer it. Aaron lingered by the dining table, straightening silverware that was already straight, his face pale. The broker was a man named Cole. He was polite, well-dressed, but his eyes were sharp and cold, like polished steel. He was clearly Trenton's man. "Mrs. Whitford," he said, giving me a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "A pleasure. I'm here to make this transition as smooth as possible." Thank you for coming, I murmured, playing the frail host. Just then, the doorbell rang again. Oh, my, I said, feigning confusion. Who could that be? It was Pastor Davies and my neighbour, Martha, arriving exactly on cue. Eleanor. We were just stopping by. Martha boomed. Savannah's face tightened in annoyance, but she was forced to be polite. Pastor. Martha. What a surprise. Mum was just handling some estate business. Oh, please, don't let us interrupt, the pastor said. But he and Martha settled themselves on the sofa, their presence anchoring the room. We sat at the dining table. The silk flower in the vase was pointed directly at Cole. He slid the papers out of a leather satchel. As you can see, Cole said, his voice smooth and reassuring. It's a standard contract. We provide a very generous, all-cash offer, and you don't have to worry about a thing. Mom isn't really lucid enough to handle all these documents. Savannah chimed in, smiling at the guests. That's why Aaron and I are stepping in, to make sure she's taken care of. The camera in the vase recorded her patronizing tone. I leaned forward, my hand trembling slightly for effect. It's just so many words, I whispered, following Loretta's script. After I sign, will my name still be on anything? Cole gave a low chuckle. That's the beauty of a cash-out, Mrs. Whitford. You'll sign, and poof. He snapped his fingers. All your worries disappear. You won't have to think about this house, or the taxes, or the upkeep. Ever again. He was explicitly confirming, on tape, that I would be signing away all my rights. We had him. I could feel the victory. And then, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his polite mask slipping. Excuse me? He said abruptly, standing up. I must take this. He walked out onto the front porch. The air in the room was thick. Savannah looked furious at the interruption. In a car parked down the street, Loretta and Marcus were watching their own phones. A text message came through to Loretta from a source she had inside Trenton's lawyer's office. They're spooked. Something tipped them off. They're preparing for a legal challenge. Abort. When Cole walked back in, the man was gone. The cold eyes were all that remained. There's a complication, he said, his voice flat. He began packing his satchel. My principal requires a formal letter of competence, or, in this case, incompetence. He looked at Savannah. We need the signed affidavit from your Dr. Kelton, confirming her mental state, to protect all parties from future litigation. The trap had failed. He wasn't going to sign. He wasn't going to be caught. Savannah's face went white, then red. What? No, she hissed, forgetting the pastor. We had a deal. Just do it. She gestured at me. She'll sign. She's old. She's confused. She'll sign whatever we put in front of her. She forgets what she signs anyway. A shocked silence filled the room. Martha and Pastor Davies stared, their polite smiles frozen. Savannah had just admitted it. Aaron cracked. The pressure was too much. Savannah. Shut up, he yelped, his voice high. We can't wait for the stupid Dr. Trenton. His people won't give us any more time. Mr. Aaron, Cole said, his voice dangerously quiet, cutting him off. That's just my very difficult boss. He snapped his briefcase shut. No doctor's note, no deal. Get the paperwork. He walked out the front door without another word. The meeting was over. Loretta and Marcus were disappointed. We had Savannah's admission on tape. But Cole had walked, and the larger conspiracy charge was dissolving. Trenton, now spooked, wouldn't use a broker. He would use fear. That night, after the pastor and Martha had left with worried, backward glances, the house was a tomb of anger. Savannah didn't knock. She hammered on my locked bedroom door, her voice a raw, ugly snarl. "You did this. You sabotaged this." I sat on my bed, my heart cold. "Do you have any idea what you've done if this doesn't go through? If Trenton doesn't get his money? It's not just us. He knows where you live. You're not safe either." I stood and walked to the door, placing my hand on the wood, my voice just loud enough for her to hear. "I understand," I said, my voice empty of all emotion. "And because I understand, I am going to end this. In a way you cannot possibly imagine." The legal trap had snapped shut on nothing. The direct assault had failed. It was time to move into the grey. At Marcus's urging, I agreed to meet a journalist, a sharp young woman who specialized in elder abuse and financial fraud. We met in a sterile coffee shop halfway across Denver. I was just an anonymous source. A grieving mother. I told her everything. The resulting article, published on a major state news website, was devastating. The headline was clean and brutal. "Colorado widow alleges family. Doctor conspired to steal home." The story, as they say, went viral. It was shared on neighborhood forums, on social media, in chat groups. Loretta, seeing the opening, went to work. Using a series of anonymous but concerned-sounding accounts, she began connecting the dots for the public. She posted in review forums. "Has anyone else had a strange experience with a Dr. Kelton at Solicebridge?" Solicebridge Behavioral Clinic seems very quick to sign competency papers for families. Within a week, the State Medical Board announced a formal investigation into Kelton's practices. The fallout was immediate. Savannah's small real estate firm, Silvercrest Realty, suddenly found itself fielding calls about the ethics of its star agent. Loretta, posing as a former client, sent an anonymous email to the managing partner detailing how Savannah had advised an elderly client to transfer assets. Savannah was called into a meeting. She came home that afternoon, her face a mask of thunder. She had been suspended indefinitely. Their primary source of income was gone. Trenton was not a patient man. The house sale was dead. The money was gone. And his name was now attached to a doctor under state investigation. He grew angry. He abandoned all pretense of business. A dark sedan began parking across the street, just watching. Then the envelope appeared in my mailbox, no stamp, just my name scrawled on it. Inside, I found a single, heavy brass bullet and a small, typed note. "Anyone can sleep and not wake up, just like your boy." Loretta took the bullet and the note straight to the police. This was no longer a civil matter. It was a credible, terroristic threat. Trenton, the loan shark, was officially on their radar. The nights became difficult. The phone would ring, and I'd pick up to dead air. I slept with a chair wedged under my bedroom doorknob. But the fear was clarifying. This wasn't just about my family. It was a network, a sick ecosystem of predators, the loan shark, the dirty doctor, the ambitious broker, all feeding on people like me. The pressure finally broke Aaron. With Savannah's income gone and a loan shark threatening our lives, he fell apart. He started drinking. And one night, he stumbled to my locked bedroom door. I heard him slide to the floor, his voice thick and slurring, choked with tears. "I didn't know. Mum," he sobbed, his words muffled by the wood. I didn't understand. She said it was a formality. I just co-signed. I just wanted to help her. I didn't know what it really meant. I stood on the other side, my hand on the cool wood, listening to my youngest son confess his weakness. He wasn't a plotter. He was a fool. Savannah, by contrast, only grew more vicious, cornered. She blamed everyone but herself. That damned article. She would scream at Aaron, loud enough for the keychain in my pocket to hear. She's ruined us, that old crone, playing the victim. She did this to us. As she raged, I worked. I quietly packaged the new recordings, her screams, her blaming me, her acknowledgement of the article, and sent them to Marcus's contact in the Financial Crimes Division. The police and the district attorney's office were now moving. They had the autopsy waiver. They had the insurance emails. They had Trenton's direct, violent threat linking the money to my son's death. It was a powerful circumstantial case. But, as the prosecutor told Marcus, it wasn't enough for a murder charge. We need a direct link. Marcus, the prosecutor had said, we need something that proves she administered the overdose. They needed a confession. I knew they were right. That night, I sat in the garage. The cold air smelled of oil and old tires. I was listening to the hours of audio I had collected, skipping through the files. I stopped on a recording from weeks ago, one of her reassuring Aaron. Her voice was impatient. It's fine. Aaron, just relax. He was just stressed and overtired. I didn't do anything but give him his pills to help him sleep. He'll just sleep. I paused the recording. He'll just sleep. The words hung in the dark. An idea began to form, cold and precise. I looked at the dark shape of the Mustang. I knew where the final confrontation had to be. The time had come to set the final trap. I found Savannah in the living room, nervously scrolling through her phone. I let my shoulders slump. "Savannah?" I said, my voice heavy with defeat. "I can't take this anymore." She looked up, her eyes narrow and suspicious. The threats, the phone calls, the article. It's too much. I let out a shaky breath. "You win. Let's just get it over with. Meet me in the garage tomorrow night. We'll sign the papers for the car. We'll talk about the house. Just us. We'll fix this." Her suspicion vanished, replaced by a hungry, triumphant gleam. This was what she wanted me, isolated, ready to surrender. "Yes, Mom," she said, her voice instantly smooth. "That's a very good idea." My next call was to Aaron. "Aaron," I said, my voice quiet. "I need you to come by tomorrow evening, before Savannah. I need to talk to you about Dylan. Privately." He agreed, his voice small and miserable. My last call was to Loretta. "It's time," I said. "She's coming to the garage tomorrow night." Loretta was all business. She confirmed a small, unmarked team, including an assistant district attorney, would be parked in a van 2 blocks away, monitoring a live audio feed. They would be ready to move in. That night, I sat in the driver's seat of the Mustang one last time. The smell of old leather and faint, lingering gasoline filled my lungs. I remembered a conversation with Dylan, just after he got engaged. He'd seemed so happy, but there was a shadow. "She's amazing, Mom," he'd said, staring into his coffee. "But sometimes, I think she's more in love with the life that money builds than the person building it." The words were a cold comfort now, a warning I hadn't understood. The next day, I prepared the garage. It was no longer a garage. It was an interrogation room. I took one of Loretta's recorders and taped it securely under the passenger seat of the Mustang. I took the small, button-sized camera she'd provided and nestled it on a high shelf of tools, aimed directly at the small workbench where we would sit. I left the main garage door cracked open just an inch, letting a single, sharp slice of streetlight cut into the darkness. It was cramped. It was claustrophobic. It was perfect. My final prop. I sat at the kitchen table and, with a shaking hand, I wrote a fake confession. I am the one who gave Dylan the pills. I didn't mean it. He was so stressed. I just wanted him to sleep. I gave him a few extra. I just wanted my son to rest. It was my fault. I laid the single sheet of paper on the workbench in the garage, right in the beam of light. It was bait. Savannah, the woman who had meticulously refused an autopsy, could not allow a document to exist that suggested anyone had tampered with those pills. She would have to destroy it, and she would have to admit why. Aaron arrived first, looking like a ghost. I sat him down at the kitchen table. I have one question for you. Aaron, I said, my voice not unkind, but firm. Your brother. If Dylan were standing here, and he knew you watched his wife use his death to pay her debts, if he knew you helped her, what would he say to you? That's all it took. He dissolved. He put his head in his hands and sobbed, a raw, ugly sound. I didn't know, he cried. Not at first, but that night. The night he died. She was so calm. She was on the phone, checking bank accounts. Not him. Not him. I knew something was wrong. I knew it. And I said nothing. He was, as I'd suspected, a coward. I don't want you down there, I said. When she arrives, you will go to the top of the stairs to the garage. You will not interfere. You will not make a sound. But you will listen. You owe your brother that much. Night fell. I was in the garage, waiting. I heard the kitchen door open, then footsteps. Savannah entered the garage, pulling the door shut behind her, plunging the room into near darkness, save for the single beam of light on the workbench. She didn't know that Loretta had just activated the audio feed. She didn't know Aaron was on the stairs, listening. She walked toward the light, eager. Then she saw the paper on the workbench. Her face, cut in the harsh light, changed from triumph to confusion, then to a sudden, sharp fear. She looked at me, her eyes wide. What is this? I met her gaze, my heart a cold, steady drum. It's the story we're both going to agree on, I said calmly. Unless you want to tell a different one. Savannah stared at the paper on the workbench, her face pale in the single beam of light. Then she laughed, a short, ugly bark. You're kidding me. You've been watching way too many movies. Old woman. I don't think so, I said, my voice quiet, but it carried in the small, cold space. They'll find the pills, Savannah, the ones you bought 2 days before he died. They'll match the toxicology. They already know about the insurance policy, the one for $750,000, the one you were the sole beneficiary on. Her smile cracked. The color drained from her face. So you have a choice, I continued, my voice as cold as the concrete floor. You can sign that paper. We'll tell the police I was the one. I was confused. I was grieving. I gave my son too many pills. Or You can tell them the truth, that you bought the pills, that you gave them to him, that you sat there and watched him die, that you refused the autopsy. You tell them that. And I will tell the prosecutor you cooperated. You. Who the hell do you think they'll believe? She spat, her voice rising to a snarl. A grieving young widow, or a confused, senile old woman who's already been in a behavioral clinic. You have no proof. No one can prove I touched those pills. It's just... She stopped. Her eyes darted to my hand, which was resting in the pocket of my dressing gown. I slowly pulled out the simple keychain, holding it between my thumb and forefinger. I pressed the small button on the side. A tiny, mechanical click echoed in the silence. "You're right," I said, my voice still a whisper. "This garage has terrible acoustics, but these little things, they pick up everything. Every word you said tonight, every threat you've made for the last 3 weeks." I tilted my head. "Aaron can hear you. He's on the stairs. And outside. So can the police. They're all listening. Are you sure you don't have anything else you want to say?" Her face contorted. It wasn't greed or anger. It was pure animal panic. She lunged, not at me, but at the keychain. "Give me that!" She screamed. She grabbed my wrist, twisting it. I was 64, but I held on, fueled by a rage I didn't know I possessed. We slammed against the side of the Mustang. I felt a sharp, searing pain as my head hit the doorframe, the metal biting through my thin skin. I cried out, more from shock than pain, but I did not let go. The garage door was torn open, light flooding the space. Aaron tumbled down the stairs, his face white with terror. "Stop. Stop it." He was too late. Loretta was already there, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. They pulled Savannah off me. She was screaming, fighting them. "Get off me. She's a crazy old woman. She's lying." In the scuffle, the keychain flew from my grasp, skittering under the Mustang, lost in the shadows. For a heart-stopping second, I thought it was over. But then, Savannah, her face wild, pointed at me. And she confessed. She screamed it at the top of her lungs. Not to me, but to the officers. To the camera on the shelf she never saw. It was just a few pills. He was never going to give me the money. He was going to cut me off. It was just a few pills to sleep. I didn't think he would die. I didn't think he would actually die. The assistant district attorney, a calm woman in a dark suit, stepped out from behind the officers. She had been standing in the doorway the whole time. "Savannah Whitford," she said, her voice cutting through the garage air. "You are under arrest for suspicion of second-degree murder, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit elder financial abuse." The words dropped like stones in the sudden, awful silence. Savannah just collapsed, her body going limp as the officers cuffed her hands behind her back. Aaron was leaning against the wall, his whole body shaking. He looked at his wife, his eyes dead. "You killed him," he whispered. It wasn't a question. "You killed my brother. For money. For a car. For this house." It was the final, severing blow. They led her out. Through the house. Out the front door. Into the flashing red and blue lights that lit up the entire neighborhood. The curtains of the houses across the street were pulled back. The neighbors who had heard my concerns about Aaron's legs were all there. They watched as the grieving widow from the news article, the one who had been suspended from her job, was placed in the back of a police car. Her public ruin was complete. After they all left the police, the prosecutor, Loretta, even Aaron, who was taken in for questioning, I was alone. A medic had taped a small bandage to my temple. I sat in the driver's seat of the Mustang. There was no relief. There was no peace. Justice had been served, but it was a cold, empty meal. Dylan was still gone. I sat there for a long time, in the smell of oil and thyme. Then I got out, took the keys to the Mustang from my pocket, and hung them on the hook on the wall. "This car doesn't belong to anyone now," I whispered to the empty air. "It belongs to your memory." Outside, the sirens were gone, leaving only the quiet of the suburbs, a 64-year-old woman, and the heavy, finished weight of revenge. Thanks so much for listening to my story. Seriously, it means a lot. Drop a comment down below and let me know where in the world you're tuning in from. I'd just love to hear from you. And if this story moved you, please hit that subscribe button for Grandma's Family Diary. Give this video a like, and maybe even hit that hype button so more people get to hear it. Your support means everything.